Yinlin is one of the most popular characters in all of Wuthering Waves, and she's coming back during the first half of patch 2.3. But with her being so old, is she still worth pulling? Well, that's what I'm going to be telling you in this video, because I'm going to be covering Yinlin's biggest pros and cons. The first pro that Yinlin has is the fact that her signature weapon is in the running for best weapon in the entire game. It's honestly kind of scary just how good Stringmaster is as a weapon. It is honest to God one of the only weapons in the entire game I can say that truly works on every character for the class that it's made for, being damage dealers. And this only gets better when you realize just how many characters are in the class that this weapon belongs to. You see, Rectifier characters have had an absurd amount of representation ever since the game's release. We got Yinlin at first, then we got Zhezha, then we got Shorekeeper, we got Phoebe, we got Cantarella. They just won't stop with the Rectifier characters. And obviously not all of them use Stringmaster, but a lot of them do, especially when we include launch characters. For example, there is Zhezha. With Zhezha, you have the nice benefit of knowing that Stringmaster is in fact this character's second best in slot weapon, being not even 5% worse than her own signature. This all has to do with just how universal this weapon's passive is. First of all, a base attack of 500 with 36% crit rate. That is very good if you ask me. That is actually the optimal stat spread for a weapon. And don't even get me started on its passive. First of all, a universal 12% damage bonus. That's kind of good, let's be honest here. And then additionally, we get 12% attack for whenever you do skill damage stacking up to 2 times. Well, let me tell ya, Rectifier characters like doing skill damage. For example, Cantarella, Phoebe, Zhezha, they all do skill damage, and it's all more than 1 tick. So getting 24% attack just for free on almost every Rectifier character is kind of insane. And that's not even to mention the fact that you get an additional 12% for being off-field. This is incredible for not only coordinate attack characters, but also characters who are very good at quick swapping. Because whenever you're swap canceling an ability, it counts as the character being off-field, and thus gains the extra 12% attack from Stringmaster. I genuinely cannot understate just how good Stringmaster is as a weapon. It is the second best in slot for Zhezha, for Phoebe, is the third best for Cantarella, and then it's just the straight up best in slot for both Yinlin and Encore. So even if you didn't have a Yinlin herself, Stringmaster would be an excellent pickup. But if you do have Yinlin, it just becomes so much more worth it to pull for. The second point for Yinlin is that she is the current best liberation damage buffer in the entire game. This is more so due to a lack of competition, but hey, it counts still, you know? You see, liberation damage buffers are very few and far between in this game. We have 3 of them right now. We have Jian Xin, Changli, and then Yinlin herself. First, we have to discuss why Jian Xin and Changli are not the best. It's honestly very simple. They have very long rotations. Jian Xin can get down to 7 seconds, but this requires completely ignoring her forte, which means that you completely brick the energy regeneration of the team, which means you'll lose damage because you need more energy regen substats. Then there's also the fact that if you do choose to use her forte, the rotation becomes a lot longer, maybe even going to 10 seconds. And for all of that time, the damage output you're getting out of her is not exactly impressive. So Jian Xin, while having the biggest liberation damage buff, is actually one of the worst characters you can use for your liberation characters. Even someone like Sanhua or Yang Yang would be better. Then there's Changli. Changli also struggles from having a pretty long rotation. And if you choose to do the entire thing, you're looking at a nearly 12-second rotation, maybe even longer. So let's be honest here, if you're trying to just purely buff a character, Changli might be one of the worst options in the entire game. Now obviously Changli makes up for this by doing damage, but at that point you're better off completely ignoring her outro skill and just going for a quick swap comp. Which leaves Yinlin as the de facto best liberation buffer in the entire game. She has a relatively short rotation, being around 7 seconds, which is the standard for a sub-DPS character. She also has high damage output, especially if you pull for Stringmaster, and she's capable of running the 5-piece Empyrean Anthem, giving you additional buffing. So overall, if you're looking for the best Liberation buffer, Yinlin is your pick. But obviously it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There has to be some negatives here too. The main one is the fact that Yinlin is incredibly lacking in the teams option. You see, Yinlin might be the best Liberation buffer in the game, however we don't exactly have many Liberation DPSs who she is capable of working with for this. So she ends up mainly being played with Sheng Liao, as well as the fact that she's also played with Jinchi, where she is not even the best in slot option. Now at a casual level, she is the best character to run with Sheng Liao. Her Ultra skill is essentially perfect for him, giving 20% Electro damage amplification and 25% Liberation damage amplification. And considering the fact that Sheng Liao is an Electro Liberation character, this is quite literally perfect for the guy. However, she has heavy competition if you're good at quickswap teams, because Chongli is here yet again to ruin a sub-DPS's day. Chongli is famous for slipping herself into any team she feels like if you're good enough, and Sheng Liao is perhaps one of the biggest contenders for good quickswap characters. So that immediately means that the better you are at the game, the more value Yinlin loses for this team. The other team that Yinlin is primarily used with is with Jinchi. However, here she is obviously not the best in slot. She is the second best in slot assuming you have Stringmaster, but even then, Cantarella gets really close. And then if you do not have Stringmaster, Cantarella just straight up wins even if she's on a 4-star weapon as well. This is because she just has a better Ultra skill as opposed to Yinlin. Cantarella and Zhezhi are able to buff resonant skill damage with their Ultra skills, which Yinlin cannot do, so Yinlin just loses when it comes to the skill DPS. The second con is the fact that Yinlin is incredibly signature reliant. You see, outside of the Jinchi and the Sheng Liao comps, Yinlin is primarily used purely for her damage output. However, Stringmaster is so strong that whenever you do not have Stringmaster, you'll lose so much of that damage output that she honestly doesn't become worth running anymore. Just for a fun statistic, the only other character that is this reliant on their signature weapon is Brant, and we all know how famous that guy is for being essentially dead without his signature. So if you're trying to aim for Yinlin but you can't get Stringmaster, maybe try delaying that plan for a bit. I'd honestly pull for Stringmaster before I pull for Yinlin, to be honest. And as I mentioned in the previous section, there's not many Resonance Liberation characters that you're able to play with Yinlin other than Sheng Liao. There is Kalcharo, I guess, but that's more of a quickswap based team due to Kalcharo being easily interruptible. And in those quickswap based teams, Yinlin's damage output becomes a lot more important. So guess what? Not having Stringmaster is, yet again, kind of a problem here. The difference between a Yinlin with Stringmaster and a Yinlin without Stringmaster is almost 20%. This is a ridiculous damage difference that I wouldn't wish upon any character. And then the final point I have to make is honestly kind of a nitpick, but it's still just as valid, which is that despite being a rectifier character, Yinlin's range is deceptively short. If you're fighting a boss like the Impermanence Heron and it runs away from you, you cannot act like any other rectifier character and just keep going. No. This is because Yinlin attacks with her doll, and this doll is on a string. So, yeah, you are limited by range because of that damn string. I know, annoying, right? And you can say that that's a horrible nitpick, which, to be fair, kinda is, but it can still be really annoying. Especially since in Yinlin's optimal combos, she wants to use her heavy attack instead of her basic attacks, and her heavy attack might as well be a melee attack, because that hitbox is so close to Yinlin herself that you are not hitting that if you are not literally hugging the enemy. But those are just my thoughts on Yinlin. Are you going to be pulling for her? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're down there, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, if you have any questions, be sure to join my Discord, which is linked in the description down below. I'm pretty active in there, so if you ask your question in my Discord, there's a pretty good chance I'll respond. But that'll be it from me. Peace.